Today we're going to be making some beautiful still life oil pastel and paintings inspired by French artist Henri Matisse. He lived in the early 1900s, which means he is not living anymore, but we still love his artwork. His paintings had such fun, vibrant colors. He used a lot of patterns. His still lifes were made with fruit and vegetables and flowers that were loosely shaped. He wasn't too fussy with every detail. They're loose, they're fun, they're vibrant, and they remain famous today. So we're going to be using some of those ideas in our still lives. We want to remember to use cooperation with our group. You each have a basket of things to arrange. You're going to need to decide as a group. Once you've arranged everything the way you like it, make sure it looks good from both sides so that both sets of people have interesting things to draw. Then you're going to start to draw. And if you notice, I already made a mark and then I changed my mind on how I was going to start. So I'm starting with a mistake, but that's okay because mistakes show that we're trying. So I'm going to start with the beat because that's something that is in the front. And I'm going to try to draw things that are in the front and then move backwards. That way I don't have things overlapping in a way that I don't want to see. Like if I were to draw the box first, then it would be showing through my beat, if that makes sense. I'm drawing my garlic. I'm just loosely looking at their shape and loosely drawing the outline or the contour of their shape. The eggs are white, so they're not very easy to see, but I'm going to outline it with a white. Now that I've got some things in the front drawn, I'm drawing the box. Now, when I'm drawing this cheese wedge, which can be really challenging if you have this point of view, but I'm drawing the inner part that kind of looks like a triangle and then the circle, and now I'm adding on the edges a little bit. It's not perfect, but you can use your oil pastels to cover some things a little bit sometimes, or honestly, it's fine. If you have mistakes, we're just going to leave them in there. One thing I forgot to do was draw this pear on top of the cheese, so you can see the line of the cheese going through the pear, but that's okay. The bread is easier because it's more of a blob shape. But remember, as you're doing this, your eyes are your most important tool. You want to look carefully and more often at what you're drawing than at your paper. So really use your eyes to look at the objects in front of you. Try your best to think, what shape is this? And think how you can break it down to make it a little bit easier. And it's okay if you lightly add multiple layers of oil pastel. To add a line through my painting, I'm not going to go through the objects, but I'm just going to find a spot and draw a line that kind of looks like the edge of a table. And on one half of that, I'm going to draw a fun pattern, and on the other half of that, I'm going to do a different pattern. Also, I want you to use your oil pastels to color in the smaller objects that you just drew. And for the eggs, since white is hard to show up, I'm going to use blue to show. If you look at the eggs, notice that you do see some gray shadows as you look at that. So I didn't see a gray in my oil pastel, so I got a blue. And I'm using that to draw a bit of the edges and draw a bit of the shadows, the lumps and bumps that I see on the egg, and making some of those marks with the blue. As you color your objects, look closely at the colors. Pears are normally green, but when I look at this pear, I notice that the bottom of it is actually orange and yellow. I notice the top is green. I notice some spots where the light is hitting it and it's a little bit lighter. I notice that there are some brown spots on the pear. So I want you to add as many different colors to each of your objects as you can. The more colors you can add, the more interesting your art will look. Now, just because I said the more colors you add, the more interesting it will look, does not mean you should go crazy adding a million colors. Try to look at what you're drawing and add colors that look like what you're looking at. We may not have the exact colors, but that's okay. My pear, I thought it was too big on the top. I didn't really like the way it looked, so I took a brown and I made the shape a little bit better. That's okay. I can still see the green in the background that I first didn't really like. That's okay, because remember, we're just going with mistakes that we have and keeping at it. when it comes to doing the top of my paper, I couldn't reach it really well, and it's just those flowers, so I decided to turn my paper upside down. And I'm trying to keep loose shapes like Matisse did by not worrying too much about drawing each individual petal, but I'm trying to draw the general shape with the loops and the circles, and some of that kind of got covered up with when I added more colors in. So I'm taking this blue, it's broken, but that's okay, and I'm making some of those lines. Next week, we're going to paint on these, and we're going to paint the larger shapes. So think about what you would like to paint, and everything else should get oil pasteled. I'm going to be painting my bread and the top and the bottom of my background and my tray. Now, what I forgot to do, or what I realized I could do, when you paint over oil pastels, something really magical happens, which is the paint doesn't stick on the oil pastels. So we don't have to wait for our paint to dry to add fun textures on the oil pastel. We can actually go ahead and do that today. So don't forget to write your name on your paper. But if you finish your main fruits and vegetables with oil pastel and you've written your name and there's still extra time in class left, you can do the next step. The next step is to add lines or patterns, designs of some sort to make the bottom lines or circles or swirls different from the top. I did lines across and up and down for the bottom, and I did lines straight up and down for the top. Today we're going to be painting our still lifes. Remember, Mr. Brush, he needs to get a bit of water for these kind of paints. I'm going to start with realistic colors for my food, since that's what I was doing last time pretty much. And I'm not going to need to wash Mr. Brush right now because I'm just using the same color. But if you do dry out like mine was starting to dry out, you just do a quick pop into the water and that will get you. Now remember, if Mr. Brush wants a new color, he needs to take his nice relaxing bath, la-di-da-di-da, wipe it on the lip, and then you're gonna go to whatever other color that you want. So for my backgrounds, I am going to use fun colors. I'm not going to use realistic colors at all. I normally do an outline and then fill it in to keep it looking neat and to make sure I don't accidentally paint on a spot I don't want to. And remember, if wet paint touches wet paint, it will bleed into each other. You can see that happening on my bread, where the top of my bread is turning pink, but that's okay. If I want to fix that, I can get a little paper towel and dab it. You'll see I'll try that in a minute. Now, if you didn't do this last time, and if your paper dries today, you can use oil pastels to add some interesting lines and patterns to your foreground and your tablecloth and your wall. I'm doing stripes back and forth and up and down on the bottom, and just thicker stripes on the top. Not super creative. You can get a lot more creative on yours if you want. Remember, creativity takes courage, and you've got this.